Welcome. This is For Better and Worth,
the podcast where we don't believe you have to sacrifice your relationship while you build your net worth.
We are your hosts.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Ericka Young, and we're so glad you joined us today.
All right, y'all, come on. Let's get into it.
Hey, we are back. It is so good to be here at the For Better and Worth table. How about you, hun?
Look, it's always good to plug in and press play, or better yet, press record. So we're glad to be back with you all. And, you know, we've been talking, and, man, there's a lot going on out there in the world today and in the environment. And if I read another article talking about a company that is laying off employees, I'm like, man, what is going on with layoffs, inflation, and interest rates, and, you know, all of that stuff? There's a lot going on. So we just want to get into it and talk a little bit about some of the practical things that you can do in times like now where there's some degree of uncertainty in the markets. You know, the stock market is performing, it's performing well, but I still think you've got to, be mindful of what's going on. So.
Yeah, I mean, and in the last year, it wasn't always performing well. There's.
I know.
Yeah, even 6 months ago. So I think, with inflation and gosh, I mean, Amazon laid off 23,000 people recently, and who knows if it's going to be more because, they did it in two different ways. Different companies are just kind of coming out the woodwork with their layoff plans, and
all the tech companies are like going about it, and the sector I work in, I've dealt with layoffs over the years just because it's kind of what you work in healthcare, and you come to realize that's a potential. Mm-hmm. And so it's always made us prepare differently. So we've always tried to have practical approaches to how we would approach layoffs, should they hit us. And we've been impacted by them in the past. So
our first, I guess it wasn't maybe our first, but when I was at Motorola, they were offering voluntary and involuntary severance packages. And we weren't quite out of debt then. And I really wanted to take the voluntary because my kids were little, and I was just... I was feeling the pressure and stress of wanting to be more available to the kids, but also the stress at work and these ideas around business. There was just a lot going on. I knew that things were changing, and we just weren't in a financial place to say, you quit today, And so I couldn't take that involuntary, severance.
Or the voluntary portion of it.
Yeah, the voluntary, right. And so that, but annually, those types of things would come up at Motorola back in the day. And since I've been removed from it, I'm not sure how that's happening now, but, we would see that around the holidays quite a bit. And I know that you've seen that in your industry too.
Yeah, but I think even if we go back to when they had that first voluntary, layoff, we started thinking about, okay, well, how could we prepare for that if that's what we wanted?
Yeah.
So we actually started thinking about it slightly different because most people don't look to voluntarily leave their employment. It's like, well, what are you going to do? You got to go get employment somewhere else. But, we were, working a plan. And we knew at some point you were going to transition. So I think it really made us start thinking about some things differently.
Yeah, the biggest thing we had to do to prepare was to finish getting out of debt. We were close, but we still needed a solid 6-8 months before we were done with the debt entirely. And so that was one method of preparation to be able to step away from a job that was paying pretty well. And I think that is a really important point right now that a lot of people need to pay attention to is what is your fastest path to debt right now, given all of the things happening? Like inflation won't hit you quite as hard if you're out of debt and you can expand a little bit on how much you're paying at the grocery store, at the gas pump, and all of that. And so, um, yeah, it's not quite as painful. It's annoying, sure, yes. Do you want it to happen? No, got it. But can you afford it a little bit more if you're out of debt? That's a true statement.
So I think the first thing that we would say from a practical nature is when you think about today or you think about the future and when layoffs are coming or the possibility of layoffs, I really think one, you have to maintain that focus on getting out of debt. Because when you're out of debt, you don't have those responsibilities and you have some additional freedoms, to incur maybe some additional costs, like you're talking about if inflation kicks in. But the second thing that I would say is that you really have to have, just like you have a debt reduction plan, you have got to have a savings plan and not just saving for retirement because that is very important. But you need to be building a, 6 to 12 month liquid, reserve, emergency fund so that in the chance that you are laid off, your lifestyle doesn't change for at least 6 to 12 months. And that emergency fund should be 6 to 12 months of your monthly expenses.
Yes, that's key. That's huge right there. And when we did finally get out of debt and it was time for me to, step away from working and really focus on the business, we did not have that. Like, so we had about 3 months of expenses. And at the time we were like, oh, well, this is good. This will work. But that's like the very minimum, literally.
It's like
And
playing with fire.
yeah, I know it is. And so, but we were doing better than we could have been, right? So we were focused on something, but we absolutely did not have enough money to weather what I think was another rough, like a rough financial year when the bottom fell out of the real estate market. And so I think that um that is a very good point, is how you weather a storm is to have an emergency fund. Because if you have an emergency fund, at least one less thing you have to think about is how you're going to pay for food on the table.
Yeah. So you've had years of working with families and helping them to get out of debt. So when you think about seasons like, the season now where layoffs are prominent across sectors, you can't even put it into one particular sector. It's across multiple sectors. What's something else that you would say a family needs to do or put in place to navigate seasons like this, aside from, getting out of debt or building a savings? What's something else you would tell them?
Get on a budget. My favorite word, my spreadsheet queen word is get on the budget. And that doesn't mean just write everything down. It actually means starting with looking at how much you are currently spending in a month, like by category, paying attention to those details and understanding that first, and then creating a game plan for how you're going to spend moving forward. I think just paying attention to it will cause you to make different choices. It's just like trying to lose weight. It's like when we start recording everything we're eating, we're like, oh gosh, I forgot I ate that, or I didn't know that was that many calories. And that's exactly the same with actually paying attention to how much you're spending in all of the different categories, adding it up by category. I think that's huge. So that is definitely the third thing and I think that that's what really helped us to survive. Honestly, I really feel like that has helped us to survive when we've experienced layoffs. And so I know that you've experienced it a couple times. How was that affecting your career path, and how did that show up?
The first time that I experienced a layoff, it was a few years after we got married. But what was so funny? I was like, "Thank you. I want out of here anyway."
Yeah, it got a little toxic at a certain
Right.
point.
And I was like, I was not mad about it. I was like, see you suckers later.
I think you saw the writing on the wall though.
Right.
Right? So you weren't surprised, and you were mentally prepared.
Mentally, I had shifted. So by the time the layoff came, I was like, man, I want to get out of here anyway. So I felt like it was God pushing me to go and do something else. So like typically with layoffs, it's scary, but I was like, man, whatever. And I spent the next month, I interviewed more in 1 month. I think I had like 15 interviews with like 6 companies, and I had multiple job offers. So I was only laid off for a month that first time. So technically, I don't really count that one because I wanted to be out, and I felt like they, gave me my freedom, and I was
Yeah.
able to elevate and go to the next level. And, really, I'd say the impact after that was when, I shifted industries. I've been in sales for years. I got another sales job working in healthcare sales. And, I was at a point where it was happening like every year, every other year. And I was like, well, dang, this seems unstable. But it was one of those things where it didn't impact me directly, but I was shifted from here to there, different territory or different leadership or this. So it was just constant change. And I think that was more frustrating because you always had to kind of rebuild your network, or you had to rebuild your relationships with your customer base. And that was frustrating, but I was always grateful because it didn't impact me the same way where I was without a job or without employment.
Yeah, that affected morale. That's
Absolutely.
a big thing in workplaces is when even if it doesn't affect you, it affected the space and your
Yes.
ability to stay loyal, to stay focused, to stay effective. And morale is huge. And this is so even if you didn't get laid off, there's this possibility that people are like, shoot, I'm not sure I want to be in this environment, and they could leave.
Right. The people that remain are always, they don't feel like secure. Like,
Exactly.
well, you were selected, you weren't, but it doesn't create security because there's still, like, most people look at layoffs like, man, it's scary. And what we're trying to do is give you points and tips that really can help you to navigate and be prepared in the face of that.
And the other thing that I'll say is I feel like when people are on the list or not on the list, the way that that list is chosen, however that is, and we don't know all the details, the higher ups know the details on who's on the list and why, right? But everybody's always speculating the
Right.
why, and that
Right.
affects morale, right? And so if there was this season where it was, say, the bottom 10% or the bottom 10 performers, right? And that's not always the case.
No,
It's sometimes it is a restructuring where specific groups that have nothing to do with their performance, they have been eliminated. And nowadays that's a lot more common, right? And so but all of that speculation affects your ability to show up fully at work.
it does. And, it is scary, because you wonder about, well, man, I got to find another job, or I have to find other employment, and how am I going to make provision for my family, or I got to go and start over in a new workplace with new people. What is the culture going to be like? What are the benefits going to be like? Will I get my same salary? And you could just go on and on and
Yeah.
on.
So many questions.
Right. And then if you have families, you're like, man, how am I going to provide for, my family or this? And so there's a lot of factors. And I think, I just always have been a glass is half full kind of person. I've always been very optimistic versus pessimistic. And I think mentally that just helps me to better navigate. Because one thing I will tell you, in all the years of working in corporate America and going through, I think I've been through probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 rounds, 10 rounds of layoffs in
Wow.
those 25 years,
That's a
where
lot.
that's a lot, where I was only impacted twice,
Yeah.
like directly, other than, being shifted from leadership or territories or, responsibility.
But you
But
didn't
like,
lose your job
right,
except twice.
losing my job, there were a couple times where it impacted me. But I always said this to my coworkers or colleagues or friends that were impacted. I said, look, and this was my point of view. I said, if I'm laid off and I wake up tomorrow and the sun is shining and the sky is blue and the clouds are white, I'm going to be all right.
Mm-hmm.
Because we tie up so much of our value and so much of our worth and so much of who we are into our job or who we work for or what we do. And that does not define you.
Yeah.
And so I just decided that, look, this doesn't define who I am. And as long as God puts breath in my body, and if I woke up and the skies were gray, and it was raining, I
At
would
least you
still
woke
have
up.
I would still have the same response is that I'm going to be all right because I'm going to go out and I'm going to figure out a way and God is going to bless me and I'm going to get opportunities. And so I just always try to have an optimistic, point of view. And I would share that with, colleagues and friends who were impacted. And I'm telling you, I could go back over those years, over those 10 rounds of layoffs that I've seen. And most people end up in better situations.
Well, and that's what I was going to actually go back to because you said that about the first layoff situation where, you were like, thank you, you did me a favor, essentially, right? And I don't think a lot of people look at a layoff as a potential positive, as a potential opportunity to explore something different or to try something new, or that they actually did you a favor by releasing you to go off and do that. And typically in a decent layoff situation, they give you money to go away, right? And
Right.
so if you have a little bit of something to utilize to go explore, start a business, go see what else is out there in the marketplace, use your skills at a different place, make an impact like that all like think about what good could come of this
Right.
versus, oh no, they took my job.
I'm gonna have to start cueing music on the podcast. Like,
Listen,
take the shackles off my feet so I can
that's right.
dance.
Hey.
That
Be-
first layoff, I was like, I just want to praise him.
yeah, because that was not the best situation in the end. And so like it's in the heat of the moment, we always want to be in control of our destiny. And so we don't want
Yeah.
someone else to tell us, oh, no, 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 this isn't for you. But and sometimes you do need that extra push because quite honestly, this was a job that you didn't end up wanting anyway, and then releasing you meant, oh, now I got to go look for something. Whereas I don't even remember if you were looking for another job prior to them releasing you, right? But you got into it and had a few different job offers after the fact, and
Right.
so it got you into, some new industries, and so that's cool.
Yep. New skills, new talents,
That's
but
right.
I want to know, like, during those times where there was the uncertainty. I mean, were you scared, or how did you feel during those times?
Honestly, I'll be very honest. I don't think I was scared. Um, I trust in you. I believe in you. I fully knew. I had every confidence that you were going to find what you need to find. And I don't think that I don't remember. I'll put it that way. I don't remember seasons where I was afraid about the money situation. I think, not only do we do the practical side of the budgeting and trying to save and, staying within our guardrails, but we also trust God, right? And so I just knew I trusted in God and I trusted in you and I believed in your skills and talents. And so I wouldn't say fear was a part of my experiencing any layoff situation. I feel like there's this nervousness, this, uncertainty and sitting on the edge of your seat waiting and wanting that next big thing for you. I've never personally experienced layoff because I was only in corporate America for 7 years, and the rest of this time I've been working for myself, self-employed, and I have a lot of empathy for people who go through that. A lot of my clients have experienced layoffs. I that is a big part of the transitions that I have to work through with people, and so there's a lot of empathy that I have to display for people. And I always take the approach that this could be the start of something really amazing if we look at it that way. And so anticipating some good things versus worrying about what isn't happening well, and just believing that it's going to all, shake out the way that it needs to. I feel like that was a bit harder the second time when you had the layoff.
I think as you go higher and you have larger incomes, and then you think about replacing larger incomes, you're like, well, man, it creates some nervousness there. But I've seen people who have much larger incomes than mine who bounce back.
Yeah.
And I just really think that experience is like the best teacher that you can get. And it's not always an indication of future performance, but I just think that experience, when you can go back and look at it, it just really sets the road and the map. And I know in those times when I was going through things, I really just, and people can believe whatever they choose to believe. And you don't have to think like us or believe like us. But I knew, I just leaned into like, what God has for me is for me, and nobody can keep it from me.
Yes.
And I just trusted that, I had my one scripture that I just stood on. And I just would tell it over to myself, Deuteronomy 31:8, it is the Lord God. It is he that doth go before thee.
Hmm.
He will be with thee. He will not fail thee. Fear not, neither be dismayed.
Come on now. I'm
And so I
passing
was
the
like,
offering plate
I
now.
was like, okay, Lord, you out here going ahead of me.
That's right.
You already figured it out, and you're going to be with me. So I said, you know what? I don't have to worry about it. And I hope that just, anyone listening to this and potentially experiencing that, it's a level of confidence that I think sometimes you just got to walk into things knowing that this doesn't define
Yeah.
who I am. And I'm going to keep saying that because, we meet people, it's like, oh, well, what do you do?
Hmm.
Oh, who do you work for?
Yeah.
Opposed to, oh, so, hey, tell me about you. Or, learning things that are not, work related
Career related.
first,
Hmm.
finding out about the person, because there's so much that defines people and who they are outside of work.
Hmm.
And, we spend so much time working that we forget that life is beyond those four walls. And I think the more time I spend on this earth and the more experiences I have, the more I realize is that you have to live life to its fullest, and you have to embrace those things and those experiences that, you want to try new things. If it's a hobby, try it. Whatever it is, live life to the fullest.
Do you feel like this last layoff was like got you to that place where you could say that? Because it was hard. That last layoff was not easy, for several reasons. And I guess I just want you to speak to how it was different and how you were able to get to that strong confidence.
I think I had that confidence the whole time, but it took me a few months to find a job. But the good thing is that I was in a very fortunate situation where I received a severance, and we'd been very diligent. And so we had, savings, and we realized that, well, look, worst case scenario, you could be off work for a year.
Yeah, we did actually calculate that. I think that that's also a very important thing to do. We calculated how long we had for you to find a job, and our expenses would all continue to be
Right.
paid
And
and food on the table.
I think it was actually closer to 2 years that we had, you know, between the severance and what we had saved. It was a significant amount of time
Yeah, and I
that
think
if nothing changed, we could continue to live the way we were living.
yeah, and I think that that calculation can bring a little peace of mind or urgency in the search. And so getting real honest with yourself about how much time you have, because that is really really helpful. But that was what, 6 or 7 years ago?
Yeah, it was a little over 6 years ago. So
Yeah, yeah. And I think that at that time, obviously, there were lots of things different in our world, and we probably had access to more dollars than just a year's worth of expenses to utilize. But no one wants to go to deep in pulling monies out to go do all of that kind of stuff. But if you have to, that's what you have to do. It took you about 4 months to find that job, and you know, what was your like emotional state around that? What was your, how were you? Because I don't even remember. Did you know this was coming, or did you?
It was a bit of a surprise,
Okay.
and when it came, I think I saw like some transition. I was ready to do some transitioning. So like kind of like the first time, there was a big gap between these two, but kind of like the first time, I was at a point where I was like, you know what, I think it might be time to transition. And what's funny is I got that call and I had an interview that afternoon
Oh, that's right.
because I had already started thinking like, you know what, it may be time for me to move on and do something different. So I was laughing like, okay, how much money am I getting? And so then I went and had my next interview, and that didn't work out, but my mind was already prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really think that power lies in the mind, because that's where the battle occurs, is in your head. And you can control that narrative in a lot of ways. And so we're talking about practical ways to try and control that narrative by reducing debt, saving, being on a budget. But I'm talking about other ways of controlling that narrative is looking at past experiences, learning from those experiences, leaning into this opportunity for change, because a lot of people won't see it as opportunity. But then when I think about how people have double dipped or people have leveled up and got better opportunities, it can kind of change and reframe the narrative that is being put out there. Because you think about the people who are being laid off from Google and Facebook and Twitter, AI and tech is not going away.
Yeah.
And here it is, these tech companies laying people off. And I feel confident that a lot of those people are going to be able to transition into other opportunities and other roles and use those skills, because technology is driving innovation for the future.
Yeah.
And so I just think that there's opportunity that is there. And so this last time, I know that I was like, you know what? I'm going to make sure I'm on my workout agenda. I'm up working out every day, and I'm spending the appropriate time daily, like putting in work. I just acted like I was working anyway, and I was doing the things necessary to find other employment and, develop myself and take care of myself with working out and, spending time with you and the kids. And I wanted to make sure that everybody in the house wasn't worried or scared. I wanted to make sure the girls didn't have any fears. And we really embraced that time. I enjoyed that time. I remember we spent Christmas in Myrtle Beach,
Yeah.
and we had so much fun that Christmas.
Yeah.
And I
We
was just
drove to
like,
Myrtle Beach, and yeah, we
yeah,
made it work.
it was just, I was like, you know what? This is going to be all good. And I think I could have that feeling because we had been diligent and we had saved and I was receiving severance. I was out there like, me, I'm a benefit hustler. Like, I was like getting money from here, from there, from here. I was like, boy, I got more money coming in and I'm not working.
Lord have mercy. This dude. Yeah, you were taking advantage of all the benefits. And I think I think this is so big. Don't be too, proud that you can't get those unemployment benefits or, whatever. Make sure you get all your
Man, I
dollars.
was like, look, my company paid for this.
Yeah.
I earned, let me go get my little unemployment
That's
checks.
exactly right. And I think you were mentioning like the possibility that people have these high paying jobs, especially in the tech field and all that kind of stuff. You can have these high paying jobs and we can have these high lifestyles too. And I think a really good practice is to make sure that, we're being wise with the dollars during that season.
Yep.
That we are not overextending ourselves, that we're really scrutinizing what is a need versus what is a want, because then your dollars stretch longer. And that's important because again, it's stressful to be looking for a job. No matter how you cut it. I saw the looks on your face when you were like, okay, I gotta go do this again. And there towards the end, you was like, I'm so sick of this. Like you didn't say it, but your body language said, I'm tired of this. This is
Yeah,
stressful,
because it's
etc.
constant auditioning,
Yes, right.
and
And then still knowing that there were some opportunities that weren't for you, that they said no or they were waiting or whatever. There's just a lot that you're juggling. And to put a financial pressure on top of that, where, oh gosh, wait a minute, is our account going to overdraw? Or, oh no, I got to go get diapers for the baby. Or, oh my gosh, I'm not real sure when this bill is coming out and it's $200. Like that, those stress factors on top of looking for a job. If you have an emergency fund, if you know how long you have to look for something, you can put yourself in a position of the driver's seat versus the passenger seat, or versus just hanging on by a thread at the back of the car. And we want you to be in the driver's seat, making the good choices, making the right moves, so that you feel confident in your next thing, confident in your life choices. And again, we can't control everything, but what you can control, that is important. And saving money, managing your expenses during these seasons is really, really important. I've even said that, because of inflation being 8.5%, look for ways to reduce spending by 8.5%, or reduce it by 4% and then increase income by another 4.5%, right? Like, how can we navigate this in a proactive way versus reactive way?
And, look, anybody listening, we're not trying to just paint a rosy picture. We're trying to put you in a position of control, to be, like you said, in the driver's seat versus in the passenger seat. I like that analogy, because when we can be in a position of control, it helps us in how we move, because we make decisions differently. We're not, just reactive or responsive, but we're proactive. And so that's my hope, is that anyone out there listening to this, that you are taking this and saying, you know what, I can control some of this narrative, and I can control how I respond, because we can't control what a company is going to do or how industries are going to perform. But what we can control is how we respond to those things and how we prepare for them.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about making it worth it, it's all in how you choose to respond in the situation when it comes. Because I don't know anyone who hasn't encountered a layoff or some job or employment change. And if that's not you, God bless you.
That's
You
right.
have been very fortunate.
Woo, you've been spared. And get ready, right? Because in the course of a 40-year span of working, somebody is going to get laid off.
There is a high probability that it may come and knock at your door.
Exactly. So be ready.
Yeah. And be prepared. And in that preparation, that's how you can respond. So what is your, make it worth it moment here?
Save as much as you can. It's never a bad time to save. Save on your expenses and save money for the future, because there's a lot of unknown out there. Layoffs equal a rainy day. So you need a rainy day fund.
Look, she said save 6 times, people. 6 saves in there. So if you didn't get the importance of preparation, let's say it again. Save. So, well, we thank you all for tuning in, and, we hope you get something out of this. And this is really us just sharing our experience. And I think it has really set us up. And so until next time, we're out. Thank you for spending some of your time with us today.
We appreciate all your support. So be sure to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to this podcast.
You can find us on Instagram at For Better and Worth.
And sign up for our email on forbetterandworth.com.
Till next time, we're out of here.